A few years ago, researchers ran an experiment that sounds almost made up. They put people alone in a plain room, took away their phones, and asked them to do one thing: entertain themselves with their own thoughts for 15 minutes. The only other option in the room was a button that delivered a small electric shock, and a striking number of people, given a choice between their own minds and pain, chose the pain. They shocked themselves rather than sit and think. Most people, it turns out, will go to surprising lengths to escape their own heads. But not everyone. Some of you read that and felt the opposite. That 15 quiet minutes alone with your thoughts sounds less like a punishment and more like a relief. That's the question I want to follow all the way down. Why are some minds built to move toward the very thing most people flee? The world has names for the people on that side of the room. Overthinker, too intense, lives in their head. Usually said as a gentle warning, the way you'd tell someone they stand too close. Underneath it sits an assumption that thinking this much is a malfunction, something to be talked out of. But the experiment hints at something else. If a real share of people would rather be shocked than think, and you're someone who'd happily take the quiet, you aren't running a broken copy of the normal mind. You might be running a genuinely different one, tuned to find reward where others find only discomfort. So instead of asking what's wrong with thinking too much, let's open a few separate doors on this kind of mind and see what's actually behind each one. The first door is that experiment itself because it's more revealing than it looks. It was run by a team led by the psychologist Tim Wilson in 2014, and the finding wasn't really about pain, it was about idleness. For most people, an unoccupied mind doesn't stay peaceful for long. Left with nothing to do, it drifts toward worry, toward the unfinished and the unresolved. And that drift is uncomfortable enough that physical pain can feel like a welcome interruption. Now here's the interesting part about you. When your mind has nothing external to chew on, it doesn't reach for the exit. It reaches for material, a half-remembered conversation, a question you never resolved, a link between two unrelated things you noticed last week. To you, an empty 15 minutes isn't a void to fill. It's unsupervised time in the one place you most like to be. The same silence that makes most people anxious is, for you, closer to being let off the leash. But moving towards your thoughts is only a half of it. The second door is what happens once you're down there. Because you don't just think, you submerge. You lose afternoons to a problem. You look up and 2 hours are gone and you couldn't say where. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent his career on this state, which he called flow. That total absorption where the self goes quiet, time bends, and the worker briefly become the same thing. For most people, flow is rare and accidental. For you, it's a place you can reach almost on command, as long as the problem is interesting enough. I think of this kind of mind as a free diver. You can go to depth that genuinely unsettle other people, and you surface with things from down there in the quiet that surface swimmers never see. That's real and it's worth something. But the same talent has a shadow. The deeper you go and the longer you stay, the harder it gets to remember which way is up. A free diver's whole skill in the end isn't the descent, it's knowing when to come back. The third door is where this comes from, and there's no single dramatic answer, but there is a pattern. For a lot of you, it started early and quietly. Maybe you were a kid with more time than company who learned that the inside of your own head was a genuinely interesting place to spend an afternoon. Maybe you were the one always asking the question after the question, who couldn't let an answer rest until it actually made sense. Nobody handed you this on purpose. It grew because somewhere along the line going deeper got rewarded, with the small thrill of a thing clicking into place. What it builds into over years is less a habit than a taste, a pull toward complexity instead of away from it, a comfort with questions that don't resolve. Where another person feels relief when a topic closes, you feel a faint disappointment, because the closing means the interesting part is over. That isn't you being difficult. It's a mind that learned correctly that the best part was never the answer. It was the going. The fourth door is the one that costs you, and it's about other people. The mechanics are blunt. You process the world in long, branching, interconnected paths. But conversation is a narrow channel. It moves fast, it rewards the quick and the light, and it has no patience for someone who needs a few seconds to find the real answer instead of the easy one. So you've learned to compress. You hand people the headline and keep the article. Over time, that creates a strange, specific gap. You can be in a room full of people who like you and still feel like the largest part of you didn't get invited. It isn't that others are shallow, and it isn't that you're above them. It's a bandwidth mismatch. The thing you'd most like to share, the texture of how you see something, is exactly what's hardest to fit through the small opening a conversation allows. So a lot of it stays inside, unsaid, and the not saying becomes its own quiet kind of lonely. Let me be square about the cost because there is one. Some of you have used the depth as a hiding place. It is far safer to analyze a feeling than to have it, far easier to study why someone did something than to call and ask. The mind that can dive can also use the dive to avoid the surface entirely, to sit at the dinner, the meeting, the moment with your kid, while the better part of you is somewhere underwater missing it. And to be fair to the surface swimmers, there's a real wisdom in their lightness. The people who can let a thing just be a thing and laugh and move on aren't missing something you have. They've kept something you sometimes lose. Depth is not the same as living well. So here's what sits behind all four doors, taken together. Not a flaw and not a hidden brilliance to wear like a badge, just a particular instrument. A mind that finds reward where others find restlessness, that can submerge where others can only wade, and that pays for it in the gap between what it holds and what it can hand across. All of that is true at once. And the honest landing isn't that you should think less or more. It's that the depth was never the problem and never the prize. It's a tool you can aim. The real work of a life is learning to choose your descents, to go all the way down on the questions that deserve it, and to come back up on purpose for the people and the moments happening at the surface while you're under. You don't have to become shallow, you just have to learn to surface. So try one experiment this week, aim straight at that first door. Pick 10 minutes. Put your phone in another room, not face down, another room. Set a timer and then do the thing most people in that study couldn't. Just sit and let your mind go wherever it wants, with no problem to solve and nothing to react to. The point isn't to relax or to meditate. It's to take the thing you usually do by accident in conversations where it costs you and do it on purpose, where it's free. Give the diving its own time and watch how much easier it becomes to surface everywhere else. And tell me in the comments the one question you could think about for an hour and never get bored. The thing your mind goes to the second it's let off the leash. Put it where other people can see it, because someone scrolling past is about to realize their strange private obsession isn't so strange after all. Say it and let them find they've got company. If you want more of these, like the machinery running underneath the way your mind works, that's what this channel is built for. There's more on the way, and I'd be glad to have you here.